It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Welcome to a relieved edition of Rico Brogna, episode number 551. The Mets did indeed win 2 out of 3 against the San Diego Padres, and they now go into their final homestand series of the year, 3 games against the Washington Nationals, with a 2-game lead over the final wild card spot. The Mets won this series. That's the headline. That is the most important thing that happened. They won this series. How they got here, it was a little dicey. How they got here featured some frustration. How they got here wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, but the Mets needed to win this series against the San Diego Padres. And there's a few more things they need to do to lock down a playoff spot. But step one was to win a series. After what happened against Texas, after what happened before that, this was very important for the Mets to take the step of winning a series. And how they did it wasn't easy. And let's go right to Thursday afternoon. Because Jonathan taking the mound, which the Mets were basically forced to do, they did not have really any other option other than telling the young 22-year-old who's made more major league starts than AAA starts, we need you. We know that last Friday was a disaster. We know that that was bad. We get it, but we need you. And I wasn't sure what to expect. You know, going into this game, this was one of those games. I say this a lot over the course of the regular season, but certainly I would say this on September 18th with a handful of games left in the season, the final 10 games of the season left, and a wild card lead that is diminished. This was a very important game. This was an incredibly important game. You know, you play 162, but some count bigger than others. And I don't think there's any doubt. Rubber game, 3-game series, San Diego Padres, trying to not allow your 2-game winning streak to get instantly erased by a 2-game losing streak, not allow your wild card lead to get down to 1 game over teams that have tiebreakers on you in Cincinnati and Arizona. Thursday's game at Citi Field was incredibly important. And they were entrusting a 22-year-old rookie who we didn't know what to expect from. And that is why what Jonathan pulled off on Thursday afternoon was so incredibly impressive. And not only gives you hope for his next start, but gives you hope about what this kid can be as a major leaguer, because that was not easy. You're facing Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., and the San Diego Padres, a bona fide playoff team. You're doing it in such an important game, important environment, on the heels of not just a horrible start, but if you go back into his time in the minor leagues, probably the kid's time in high school, he probably never had a start as demoralizing as what happened last Friday against the Texas Rangers. So knowing all that was on the line, knowing who you were facing, this was not an easy spot for Jonathan, which is why I want to say thank you to a specific San Diego Padre. And it's funny that I'm going to say thank you to a guy that killed us in game 2 of this series. But I got to say thank you to Manny Machado. Because if you go back to the very first inning of this game, where all of us probably had the same trepidation in terms of what Tong was going to be able to do in just his 4th major league start, Manny Machado hit a baseball that should have been a double. And the San Diego Padres were going to be set up, ready to roll, with 2nd and 3rd and nobody out. Or 2nd and 3rd, 1 out, I guess, to be exact on what the situation was laid out to be. Luis Arraez had just singled in the left because the Mets can't get that SOB out. I want the Mets to sign Luis Arraez as a free agent at the end of the year just so we don't have to deal with him anymore. You play him wherever. Make him a utility player for all I care. But rid ourselves from having to ever see Luis Arraez. But I digress. First inning of this game, not sure what to expect from Jonathan. He gives up that little base hit to left field to Arraez, and then Manny Machado hits a ball that bounces off the left field fence. And for whatever reason, and I don't even care why, all I know is thank goodness it happened, Manny Machado is lollygagging into second base. The throw by Brandon Nimmo from left field was not to second base. It was to the cutoff man, Francisco Lindor, who promptly was probably screamed at, hey, cut four, throw to second base. Manny Machado, for some reason, still hasn't arrived. And luckily, the Mets executed it, and Lindor made the quick throw to second base, and Jeff McNeil applied the tag on Manny Machado, and by the gift of God, instead of second and third, one out with Jackson Merrill at the plate where contact could give the Padres a very early lead, it's a runner on third and 2 outs. And that was a very pivotal moment. A night earlier, and we will get into this later on in the Rico, the Padres also gifted the Mets a run, essentially. It wasn't the Mets scoring a run, but it was taking a run off the board when Elias Diaz did not run home, or at least slow down as he was approaching the plate on what was a base hit by Luis Ariz. And Manny Machado was a part of that too, because for some reason, Manny Machado was saying, you're good, slow down. And he wasn't good, and he shouldn't slow down. And the Padres gifted the Mets minus a run. Unfortunately, on Wednesday, the Mets couldn't take advantage of it. Jonah Tong did. Because after that gift that he was given in the top of the first inning of this game, he really went to work. I mean, he was incredibly impressive. Pete Alonso obviously has been on fire. I mean, we could just end it now. He's the Rico, I'm the man now star of the series. I mean, we'll debate it later, I guess, but Pete Alonso with a home run in each game, one further than the next, is clearly the man now. But that home run gave Jonah Tong a cushion. And even in the third inning, the one inning where Jonah gave up a run, he gives up a run in what was a very weird circumstance in the top of the third inning. Fernando Tatis Jr. hits a ball that was foul, but it was close to being a home run. And so anytime it's close, the umpires give you that crew chief review, like we saw a night earlier with Juan Soto. You know it's foul in that case, or foul in this case as well, but they're going to look at it anyway. And I don't know if that delay somehow affected Jonah Tong, but right after the delay, he throws an off-speed pitch in the middle of the plate, and Tatis Jr. bangs it up the middle for a base hit. And then Jonah Tong tries to pick him off at first base, throws it away, and then throws a wild pitch. And with the worst possible player at the plate, Luis Ariz, who's like a lock to make contact, Jonah Tong's miscues, really 3 of them in a way, directly led to the Padres tying the game up at 1. But here's the good news. Not only did the Met offense respond, so did Jonah Tong. After he gave up the base hit to Tatis, around the error and around the wild pitch, he would retire the last 2 outs of the third. He would get everybody in the fourth. He'd get everybody in the fifth. And he would end this game retiring 8 in a row. And honestly, I thought Jonah Tong could have continued in this game. But I think Mendy probably made the wise decision for the long haul. And by the long haul, I mean his next start and possibly the start after that, if he gets one. And that is to tell Jonah Tong, you gave us 5 innings. You gave up an unearned run. You didn't walk anybody. You struck out 8. You were awesome. So instead of pushing our luck and asking for a 6th inning with your pitch count already at 82, so probably going to have to dip into the mid-90s to get through 6 innings and maybe leave with guys on base, let's call it a day. And because at that point, the Mets had built a 5-1 lead and had a pretty fresh bullpen when you think about it, I didn't mind Carlos Mendoza making that move. I didn't mind it. I mean, look, the night before, and we'll get to game 2 in a little bit, he used Dom Hamill, who's no longer with us. I just mean he was DFA'd. You used Gregory Soto, who cares? You used Ryan Helsley, who cares? And you used Ryan Stanek. So you didn't use the top end of your bullpen. And since they haven't been used in days, no problem using it, which is exactly what Carlos Mendoza did. So I didn't have an issue taking Jonah Tong out. I just thought Jonah Tong was brilliant. And there is so much unknown with this Met rotation right now because they are being forced to start young guys like Sproat and McClain and Tong. And even though it feels like we know Nolan McClain so well, he's only made a handful of starts. And in Jonah Tong's case, his first start was good, but tough to judge because they had a 12-0 lead. His second start was very mediocre. Only home runs and walks were given up. The third start was the disaster. And now the fourth start showed you all the promise that this kid has. Where the other aspect of the Mets needing to perform was they needed to score runs. They couldn't just sit back and rely on a young 22-year-old making his fourth major league start to pitch at a high level. They needed to score runs. And what the Mets did in this game is they scored runs when they needed to score runs. In the bottom of the first inning, that Pete Alonso home run was important. In the third inning, right after Tong had given the lead back, or at least had allowed the game to be tied, I thought it was very important for the offense to respond immediately, and it did. And it started with an unlikely helper in Cedric Mullins, continued with Francisco Lindor, who also had really good base running to actually turn it into a single and a fielder's choice and set up second and third, nobody out. And look, if Juan Soto's not going to hit a 3-run home run, which he has still not done yet this season, at least make good contact and drive a run in, which he did. And then you've got Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo has not given this Met team a lot of extra base hits over the last couple of weeks. He gets the lefty Wandy Peralta with 2 on and deposits a monstrous 3-run home run that turns a tight 2-1 game into a little bit more comfortable of a 5-1 lead. And a credit to the Met bullpen, they locked it down. And they needed to. There are going to be more important games as this season continues. A 2-game lead is not a monstrous lead. This should not be a Rico Brogna celebration. The Mets are going to the playoffs because they got more work to do. As I've said before, they have allowed too many teams to get so close that if one of them goes on a rampage in the final 10 games and the Mets get tripped up just a couple of times, that may be enough for the Mets to not make the playoffs. So there's no messing around here. I'm glad they won. I'm glad they won this series. They got a lot of freaking work to do. And they also haven't earned our trust back. I'll ask everybody this right now. Do you trust the New York Mets? Do you trust that against the Washington Nationals this weekend, they're going to take care of business? Does anybody trust that? Let me read you an email as we mix in some emails from the mailbag, the ricob@gmail.com, to express, I think, in a very eloquent way, why, yes, we're happy they won, and we're happy they've won 2 out of 3, but you're naive if you trust this team. They got to prove it. And it doesn't mean we'll never trust this team. We all want to. It's like the girlfriend that cheated on us. Actually, once they cheat on you, you got to move on. So I don't even think that's a good analogy, though the Mets have cheated on us many times. They're the team or the friend that has to earn our trust back. And here's why, as Dan writes. A snapshot of how this team follows up series wins in the second half. It will start from the most recent. Take 2 out of 3 in Detroit, win the first game in Cincinnati, and then proceed to lose the next 8 in a row. Take 2 out of 3 in Atlanta, sweep the Phillies, and then go right to losing 3 out of 4 to the Marlins at home. Take 2 out of 3 at home from Seattle after rescuing their season from the sewer. Get the McLean bump to rejuvenate the season, and then immediately lose 2 out of 3 to the Washington Nationals. Sweep the Angels and Giants back-to-back, have a 7-game winning streak, only to go and get swept by San Diego, lose 2 out of 3 to the Giants at home, get swept by Cleveland, get swept by Milwaukee, lose 2 out of 3 to Atlanta, and then lose the first game to Seattle, bringing out a grand total of 14 losses out of 16, and probably the most disgusting stretch of the season. So I'm sure they'll definitely come out with their hair on fire against the team 30 games under 500 and cement themselves into the last playoff spot. Why would we think otherwise? That email perfectly explains why you should be happy they won this series. I am. There's a smile on my face right now. But trust them at your own peril. Trust them at your own peril. One other note on the Tong performance comes from Jeremy, who writes, Evan, Tong has now had 3 solid outings with Torrens catching and 1 disaster with Alvarez catching. Francisco Alvarez is a good catcher, but Jonah Tong may be better off with the more experienced Torrens, who generally calls a better game. I'll keep them aligned going forward. I think.
Can I touch on that?
Go ahead.
Can I touch on that real quick?
Of course, go ahead.
Because I do think that, I mean, obviously he might feel more comfortable with Torrens, but Jonah Tong still is showing a little bit of his novice approach where he's not locating a lot. Like today, even in that first inning, you're seeing like an 0-2 pitch to Manny Machado, throwing a fastball, trying to locate a pitch where it's not even close. Like he's just, and it's not struggling in a way because he did go on to go pitch 5 innings and get 8 strikeouts, no earned runs, but still he's not perfect. You could see that he's pulling the ball certain places. He has not been perfect, period. So I think there's still just like a learning curve right now.
Well, not perfect. Certainly not perfect, but I thought he made great progress in this start. But you can't deny what Jeremy writes. And I don't know if it's deeply connected to Torrens, if there's more of a chemistry between him and Torrens, if Torrens and him just work better together. But we are talking about 4 starts, 3 of them with Torrens, and the 1 start with Alvarez was a complete disaster. And the reason why I would side with Jeremy on this is I can't mess around. Right now, the Met pitching staff is in a very precarious state where David Peterson should be start to start. More on that in a little bit. They're working the tag team of Clay Holmes and Shaw Manaea. We'll get to Kodai Senga later, but we may never see him again. And so I think when talking about the young arms like Nolan McLean, like Brandon Sproat, like Luis Torrens, you want to put them in the best position to succeed. And at least in the case of Tong, he's right. There is a connection to Torrens getting the most out of him. Now, the same can't be said for Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat has made a couple of starts at the major league level, and Francisco Alvarez has caught all of them. So obviously, we've seen Sproat be fine with Francisco Alvarez, including his last start, which was an excellent one with 6 scoreless innings. Same thing with Nolan McLean. So you don't see any evidence that there's an issue. It doesn't mean Alvarez can't catch anybody. Alvarez actually has a good reputation of handling pitching. But that 1 disaster with Francisco Alvarez behind the plate and the 3 other starts with Torrens behind the plate, sure, it's enough for me to not mess around. Now let's get to game 2 of this series, because this one was annoying on a lot of levels. And I want to get right to David Peterson. David Peterson is a problem right now. There's no denying it. And for too long, I think we looked at how well Peterson pitched most of the season, how deep he was going into games most of the season. And I think we've been blinded by the fact that over the last month or so, he's just not the same guy. Let's take a look at his last 7 starts, in which he's allowed 30 runs in 34 1/3 innings. Not good, by the way. In those 7 starts, forget his record because no one cares about that. The team's record is 2-5. So when David Peterson has taken the mound over his last 7 starts, the Mets are likely to lose. Here's why. 3 1/3 innings, 6 runs against Atlanta. He had the great start in Washington when he went 8 innings and only allowed 1 run. We'll call that his last great start of the year. After that, 5 2/3 innings, 2 runs. Not bad, but doesn't get to the 6th. The start against Miami was the disaster. 2 innings, 8 runs. The start in Cincinnati, 5 1/3 innings, 4 runs. The start in Philly, 5 innings, 3 runs. But remember, they gave the man a 4-0 lead, and he very, very quickly watched it slowly dissipate. I guess that's a contradiction. So it wasn't really fast. He slowly let the lead go away, and of course the Mets lost. And his last start, the start we're about to get to, 5 innings, 6 runs. Is it a wall? Probably. But I've said this many times about guys who are struggling, and I'll especially say it now when you're at the end of this season. It really doesn't matter why a guy's struggling. Like, you could give me 15 excuses. The bottom line is he's struggling. The bottom line is when he goes out there, he doesn't give the Mets a really good chance to win. And so while overall his season has been decent, and there was a stretch of time where he was the only guy capable of giving this team innings, that is not the case anymore. It's not the case because Nolan McLean exists, but it's also not the case because David Peterson is not pitching well. And you look at this start that he made, it's different than the Holmes and Manaea stuff because it's not like David Peterson is just getting off to great starts and wearing down. Like, he began the game on Wednesday by putting the first two guys on base. Same thing in the second inning. Put a guy on base, gave up an RBI single to the 8th place hitter. Like, he was shaky from the jump. And then obviously he runs into trouble in the 5th inning. And I want to break this down because this really, really annoyed me. Obviously, this was a back and forth game. He gives up a run in the 1st inning. Pete Alonso hits the bomb of a home run to tie it in the bottom of the 1st inning. Peterson immediately gives it back in the 2nd inning on the Drake Cronenworth RBI single, and it's 2-1. The Mets come back. They tie the game on the Marte home run. It's 2-2 in the 5th inning. We've all watched David Peterson. I just gave you his last 7 starts, and I gave it to you for a reason. He has not been effective for a while. You are coming into a game in which the night before you used a tag team. So you used 0 relievers. 0. You had Sean Manaea and Clay Holmes, 2 starters, pitch the entire game. The day before that was an off day. Okay? So 2 consecutive days in which you did not use your bullpen. David Peterson is putting guys on base every single inning. As the 5th inning begins in a tie game, you have to be on alert that David Peterson may need to be taken out at some point in the 5th inning. Have I said anything crazy so far? I'll get to the specifics, but I just want to set the tone again. A completely fresh bullpen and a pitcher who's made it obvious over the last month he is not effective and is not going deep into games. Other than the 8-inning start against Washington, he did not complete 6 innings in any other start. So when he begins the 5th inning and he hits Jake Cronenworth, the 8th place hitter, alarm bells need to be going off. They didn't. Now, after that, Elias Diaz gives him an out, lays down a bunt. I totally get why he did it, but he also gave the Mets an out. Peterson then walks Fernando Tatis Jr. He is now also facing this Padre lineup a 3rd time around. There is 2 on and there is 1 out. And here's my attitude. And I said this, I have no proof. I said this out loud with nobody listening because I was by myself. I said, 1 more batter. You let him face a rise with 2 on and 1 out. And then in all likelihood, unless he gets a double play, he's out of this game. Now, if you remember back to, I guess it was 2 Ricos ago, I try to remember, to David Peterson's last start, even though David Peterson was able to successfully end the 5th inning, I was ready to take him out right then and there. It was the Philly game. I wanted to go to Reed Garrett right there. Now, would that have worked? I have no idea. All I know is that Reed Garrett eventually came in, completely imploded, and we're not going to see him for a while, unfortunately, because it looks like he's going to need Tommy John surgery. So I am showing you, with at least some consistency if you listen to the Rico, I'm ready to pull David Peterson early. I am not effing around. And especially in this case, when you have a fresh bullpen, because you didn't use the bullpen for 2 days, you would think it would make even more sense to not F around. Luis Arraez lays down a bunt, which this is not the Greg Vaughn, so I'm not going to break down my Padre thoughts on this, but he lays down a bunt with 2 on and 1 out to load the bases for Manny Machado. David Peterson needs to come out of this game. And to me, there's clearly a person who should have come in, and that person is Tyler Rogers. And I was so happy, Hoff. I don't know if you pay attention to the show that you produce, but I was driving in and I heard a caller bringing this up, and I was screaming at the radio to the caller and to Sal, who I like, Tyler Rogers, Tyler Rogers, Tyler Rogers. And the caller, then it's almost like he heard me, or maybe we think alike. The caller said, I would have gone to Tyler Rogers. And I'm like, that's my man. because that's exactly what I wanted them to do. And before you respond, Hoff, let me just quickly explain how do you go to your best reliever in the fifth inning? It's easy. Right before Manny Machado came to the plate, Ron Darling said something into the microphone, and he nailed it. He effing nailed it. He said, "This is the most important batter of the game." Correct. Sometimes the most important batter of the game happens in the fifth inning, which is why you should be comfortable using top relievers at all moments, because it's not always going to be the eighth inning. It's not always going to be the seventh inning. Sometimes it's the fifth inning. So to screw around with David Peterson or to screw around with any other two-bit reliever the Mets have would be a mistake. You go to Tyler Rogers, you try to get a double play. Look, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You go down with your best, or at least one of your best. Obviously, Edwin Diaz is your best. Even I am crazy enough to say go to Diaz in the fifth inning. So that's the mistake that Mendy made. There's no reason David Peterson should have been in that game to face Manny Machado before he hits the grand slam.
I'm going to say you're wrong on one thing.
What?
I think, yeah, you're giving David Peterson too much rope to hang himself with.
Oh, too much. Okay.
Yeah. You got to be batter to batter. Once he hits the first batter, done. Pull him. I'm sorry. And even if you say, okay, well, maybe he'll get out of that. Maybe that was a mistake. We'll see. Then give him one more. You cannot let him load the bases, because you want to know why? How many times, especially when we first got Tyler Rogers, how many times did Tyler Rogers come in with a man in scoring position, bases loaded, whatever the case is, and give up a soft single to the outfield, which scores 2 runs and blows the game up? And it's like, oh, Tyler Rogers, great job. You screwed that one up. So it's like, hey, don't allow them to get into that position. You're right. Get that double play, but do it earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I think one of the risks of Tyler Rogers is that because he's a contact pitcher, you always run into that risk. But the other positive of a contact pitcher is that he can easily get Manny Machado to roll one over and ground into a double play. Like when I'm going to a pitcher and my goal is to induce a double play, obviously a strikeout would be great, but a double play would be even better. Tyler Rogers is capable of it. Now, if you want to do it earlier, you're saying right after he gives up the base hit to Cronenworth, you're pulling him immediately with one on, nobody out in the fifth inning?
Yeah, the first batter gets on, done. Because we've seen David and this is, again, you said it, fresh bullpen. It wasn't like the day before they were sitting there and like, oh my God, what are we doing here? You have a fresh bullpen, and you kind of have to treat David Peterson, because recent history has shown, he's not effective after the fourth inning.
I think the Mets have to make a decision on David Peterson. They've got to make one, and it's not a long-term decision. This is all short-term. This is all the prism of there's 9 games left in the season, and the Mets are trying to find a way to make the postseason. I do not love David Peterson making his next start as David Peterson. I think you've got 2 options right now. I think option number 1 is you send him to the bullpen. That's option number 1. We saw him last year make that adjustment and do a damn good job, to his credit. So can David Peterson do it? Absolutely. We saw him do it last year. We saw him do it in the most high-octane position known to man. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is to use him as a tag team. You know, we already are seeing the Sean Manaea, Clay Holmes tag team. I wanted Kodai Senga to be a part of this. It's a tough call now with Senga. For those that are not aware, his first minor league start was a really good one. His second minor league start was not good. He pitched like 3 1/3 innings. He gave up a bunch of hits. He gave up a bunch of runs. He was not good. And you could tell by the way David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza have talked about Kodai Senga, they didn't talk about him with a lot of confidence. Almost as if his last start, we shouldn't have read as much into the stats more than the stuff. Obviously, I didn't see the start. I'm just looking at the box score like most of us are. So their tone certainly should have given us the heads up that they didn't have a lot of confidence in Senga. I'd be surprised after that kind of start if they're going to call him back up and give him another opportunity. But it leads now to, all right, if you're tag teaming Manaea and Holmes, and now you don't have faith in David Peterson to make a traditional start, we're good with Sproat, we're good with McLean, we're good with Tong, where do you go? How do you handle it? And I think there's a couple of options I would consider. Number one is just starting Sean Manaea. Is looking at Manaea's last performance, 5 innings in replacing Clay Holmes, combined with the way he finished the Philly game, and saying, you know what? Maybe he can start. And maybe Sean Manaea doesn't need to be a part of a tag team. And maybe David Peterson does. And maybe the new tag team, I guess we'll have to come up with new nicknames, is Peterson and Holmes. Now, the timing of that may be a little challenging. I know Sean Manaea right now is away from the team on paternity leave, which could call into question his ability to make the start on Sunday against the Washington Nationals. So you could start Clay Holmes. The problem is I don't think David Peterson would be available after pitching on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I mean, it's 3 days rest. And I guess if you're using him out of the bullpen and you're not using him in that full starting role, maybe it's a possibility. Maybe he could throw 40, 50 pitches if you allow Clay Holmes to go the first 4 innings. The Mets also have an off day on Monday. So depending on how they have to use their bullpen on Friday and Saturday, they could have Clay Holmes only go 4 innings. And instead of tag teaming it with another starter, they could simply say, we're just going to the bullpen. And our bullpen can be used aggressively since they're off on Monday. But that's where I lean right now. And I know that I, like everybody else, I'm floating with the wind right now. You know, every start is impacting our view on this. And why wouldn't it? I mean, it's impacting the Mets' view on it. There's only 9 games left. So where I'm at right now is I would allow Sean Manaea to make his next start. And I would then create a new tag team of Clay Holmes and David Peterson. Your thoughts?
I think you nailed it, unfortunately. I mean, obviously, we would have liked to have doubled down with I almost am all about these tag teams now because it does make it feel like you could say – not only are you getting length out of 2 starting pitchers, but you're saving the bullpen, which is kind of what you need for a Jonah Tong start, for a McLean or a Sproat, because you just never know. Here's the thing is, you're right. Like, I don't trust Senga. You can't bring him into that mix. I think Manaea in his last 8 innings, like you said, he's given up 1 earned run and he's looked effective. That's the key. He looks electric. He was striking guys out his last game he pitched, and he was just looking the role. He was looking dominant on the mound, where it's like he can go. I'm not saying you to push him to 6 innings, but you could do it. You may be able to get another inning in.
I'm encouraged by him. Remember, in that Philly series, when we were doing Rico's, that was the one positive I had for you. And you kind of rolled your eyes a little bit. I said, you know what? I'm
tough.
Sort of encouraged by Mendy yelling at him or whatever he said to him, and then Manaea going out and pitching a couple of innings. So here's how I would line it up. And I'll tell you how it is lined up in terms of days for the final 9 games of the year. So this weekend is mostly set. It's going to be Brandon Sproat on Friday. It's going to be Nolan McLean on Saturday. And then it's scheduled to be the tag team of Sean Manaea and Clay Holmes. What I would do is I would start Manaea, assuming he's available. I'd push Clay Holmes to Tuesday. And Tuesday in Chicago, to me, would be a Clay Holmes, David Peterson day. That's also David Peterson's day to pitch. After that, you would go Jonah Tong Wednesday against the Cubs, Brandon Sproat Thursday against the Cubs, Nolan McLean Friday against Miami. Then you come back with Manaea on Saturday, and then the David Peterson, Clay Holmes outing on Sunday. Here's the only problem with all this, because I do want to clarify that there is a problem with the way I threw out this rotation. If the Mets are in the playoffs, you have to either not start Nolan McLean Friday against Miami. You either would abbreviate his start Friday in Miami, or you would push him up to actually start a day earlier. Because remember, the wild card series would start the following Tuesday. So if he pitches Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, that's 3 days rest. So they're going to have to manipulate the rotation. And it's, look, if the Mets have it wrapped up, it's kind of easy. You could do what the Braves used to do, which is have Nolan McLean pitch on Friday, but only pitch 2 innings. You know, get a little tune-up, good to go. Because I think we all agree he's the game 1 starter. I don't know if there's any pushback on that. Like, Nolan McLean has already earned and run away with the fact that he would be the game 1 starter of the National League wildcard series, assuming the Mets get there. So that's the only part of the rotation that would need to be altered. And the way I would do it is David Peterson, Clay Holmes on Tuesday. I would skip Tong just for the time being. I'd go Sproat on Wednesday, McLean on Thursday, which has them both lined up to pitch in the wild card series, and that would give Jonah Tong the Friday start against the Marlins. So Tong would pitch with a few extra days of rest, but it would also be a softer landing spot for him, Miami as opposed to Chicago, and it has McLean and Sproat ready days-wise to pitch the wild card series if needed. And also, if Sunday's game against Miami, game 162, matters, I guess you could always bring McLean back on short rest out of the bullpen in a desperation mode. So those are the things that they may have to tweak with the rotation. But that's where I'm at right now going into the final turn and a half. Clay Holmes and Peterson should be a tag team. Minaya should start. And you need to protect Nolan McLean at all costs and try to line him up to open up a wild card series.
Remember that time we had so many starting pitchers on our team? We're like, oh, how are we going to make room for them? Maybe someone's going to go to the bullpen. Well, I mean, we're basically throwing them in the bullpen because we don't know what else to do because these guys are so terrible. But here's the one thing you're a little far ahead of me on this, man. Like, I understand you're getting a little if things work out, you push McLean ahead, you get Sproat ahead. Okay, that's fine. But I'm still thinking this is going to be a close race to the end. I'm thinking Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the season is going to count, and we're going to need our starters there.
Well, just remember, you're not eliminating anyone from starting. You're just moving the days around. So it's not as if Nolan McLean's not starting or Brandon Sproat's not starting. You're just moving them up to start earlier so that they would be lined up potentially to be in a wild card series. You're not eliminating a start from them. So there's no negative to that. And if anything, you could bring them back at the end of the Miami series to pitch out of the bullpen in case, God forbid, the season does come down to 162.
I guess the way I'm looking at it and saying we may be walking into that Marlins series, no matter what, whoever the starter is, that we need to win 2 of 3 games. Yeah. So McLean needs to start that Friday. Sproat needs to, or whoever needs to start.
Yeah, but you're just moving them up a day to face the Cubs a day earlier, and that game matters just as much. Like, they all matter the same at this point.
I know. I'm thinking pessimistically speaking, I guess.
Yeah, but it's not about pessimistic or optimistic. Like, it's not. Remember, I'm not manipulating the rotation with an arrogance towards the wild card series. He'd be making the same start anyway. Like, Nolan McLean has 2 starts left. Okay? 2 regular season starts left. That's it. It's just a matter of when those starts are made. That's all we're talking about here. So you're not moving him up to, like, not pitch as often. He's going to pitch. And keep it in mind, because I brought this up on the last Rico, and it's freaking important. He is 12 1/3 innings away from losing his rookie status. Let this be a warning to David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza. Do not mess with a pennant race because you want to keep him as a rookie. If he can go 8 innings in his next start, he's going 8 innings in his next start. Like, I get it. You may lose a draft pick that you could possibly gain from Nolan McLean winning the Rookie of the Year. Too bad. All right? Too freaking bad would be my answer to that.
And that's what pisses me off, because remember we had this conversation when he first got called up, and I go, why did it take so long? You're like, well, they're trying to do the rookie status thing, all this stuff. And the reality is they may miss on that anyway. So why didn't they just do it sooner to help this team? Because the pitching was a mess. But that's neither here nor there. We're here right now. Pitch 15 innings in your next 2 starts. I'm okay with it.
We'll all be okay with it. You know, you could celebrate your highlights with Mio Sparkling Sake, a true crowd pleaser. Light, bubbly, and easy to enjoy, whether you're at Citi Field or your favorite spot. As for Mio Sparkling Sake by name, a new tradition served chilled, imported from Japan, the official sake of Rico Brogna. Enjoy responsibly. A couple of other thoughts from game 2 of this series. I still can't get over the Elias Diaz play. And that was one of those plays that made me think, wow, the Mets are going to come back and win this game. It was so bizarre. Luis Ariz hit a single in the 6th inning against Dom Hamill that clearly was going to score Elias Diaz. And at that point was going to take what was a 6-3 game and make it 7-3. And it certainly feels out of reach. And for whatever reason, Diaz slowed down. Soto made a great throw to second base to nail Luis Ariz. And when he got Ariz out, I was stunned when SNY showed the cameras of Diaz and really the home plate umpire, Chris Siegel, signaling that the run was not going to count. And you see the replay of it. Manny Machado was really to blame because for whatever reason, Manny Machado was telling him, slow down, you're fine, you're fine. So that was one of those moments where in the sixth inning of a 6-2 game, Mets still had 12 outs to work with, and I certainly know how dangerous the San Diego Padre bullpen is. I thought, wow, this is going to be in the DVD. As I like to say, this is going to be, one of those moments you won't forget. And look, the Mets did come back to a degree. Alvarez hits the home run, the odd home run to right center. They had an opportunity for more runs after Cedric Mullins drew a walk and stole a base. But unfortunately, Lindor, Soto, and Alonso came up small. They had an opportunity, obviously, in the ninth inning when Soto came up as the tying run, which is what we were all asking for when that ninth inning began after Ryan Stanek gave them the insurance run on the Laureano home run. But even to the very end, when Soto came up, there was a small part of me that thought, this is going to be magic. This is going to be that Met victory we've been waiting for. And as the case with Soto a lot this year, and it has been a great offensive season for Juan Soto, it'll be fun during the offseason when we do Rico's breaking down his season because it's a weird one. It's a good one. It's a really good one. The stats are the stats. But obviously in the first half of the year, it felt like a lot of those stats were empty. A lot of those stats were not impactful. They have been very impactful over the last 2 months. I am not denying that. But it feels like we're still waiting for that incredible Soto moment. And maybe we'll get it to clinch a playoff spot. Or dare I say, maybe we'll get it in a playoff series against a team like the Dodgers. But when he came up in the seventh inning against Mason Miller and came within, an inch and a half of going right down the left field line for a game-tying 2-run home run, you could feel the moment. You could sense the moment. And unfortunately, it was a foul ball. And unfortunately, it really led Mason Miller to just dominating. Because after Mason Miller came within inches of giving up the 2-run home run to Soto in the seventh, what does he do? He strikes out Soto. He strikes out Alonso. He pitches a 1-2-3 eighth inning. He looked absolutely dominant. But it was frustrating because in that seventh inning and in that ninth inning when Soto came up again, you just deep in your soul would feel like, is this it? Is this the moment? And look, Soto hit the ball really hard. Hit the ball 110 miles an hour. Just right back up the middle to Robert Suarez, who fielded it and threw him out. And the Mets lost what was a very disappointing game 2 of this series. One other note from that game was Ryan Helsley. Ryan Helsley has a lot of work to do to get back in the circle of trust. In that eighth inning, he gives up a fly ball to Elias Diaz that I thought off the bat was going to get out. He walks a batter, but then picks him off, and then he gets Luis Ariz to fly out. So it was a clean inning for Ryan Helsley, relatively clean inning. But unlike Devin Williams on the other side, who's pitched well enough to kind of earn some trust back, we are not there with Ryan Helsley. And I don't know if in the next 9 days with 9 games to go, I don't know if he can earn it back. Like, I think he's one of those guys that eats innings when you're down by a bunch of runs or you're up by a bunch of runs. Now, he may end up with a postseason roster spot if the Mets make it, simply because they may not have 13 guys that literally are better than him. But I was hoping that he would pitch relatively well in some of these low leverage spots. And sometimes he has, but not enough to gain the trust back. Let me get to some more of your emails, and then we'll pick a Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series. And of course, the net negative. Ron about game 3 writes, watching game 3 while pretending to work felt like a playoff baseball game. Is it? No. But these next 9 games might as well be. Every game and every pitch matters so much because of the Mets' 7-game losing streak. 2 out of 3 versus the Nationals is a bare minimum, right? We need a sweep, but is that too much to ask? Also, shout out to Jeff McNeil, for the double on Monday night. You said it on the drive home pod how important it was. Just wanted to remind everyone that two out, 2-run double changed the whole game. Give him the Rico star of the series. Not really. Yeah, we can't give it to him, but it was a very, very important hit. No question about it. Underrated moment in that game. This guy wrote the subject line sex. I think he was trying to get my attention. The piggyback idea worked wonderfully. We now need to do the same with Kodai Senga and David Peterson. I don't know if I can do it with Kodai Senga. You got to go to AAA and dominate. You got to go to AAA and leave no doubt. He went to AAA, had one good start and one really bad one. Mark writes, Pete Alonso is officially hot. Evan, I'm watching game 3 right now, and Brandon Nimmo hit his 3-run home run in the bottom of the 3rd. But I want to talk about Alonso's at-bat before Nimmo's. That was an at-bat he was taking in April and May. Randy Vasquez tried to backdoor a breaking ball, and he took it. Not his pitch. He wasn't chasing outside the zone, and he also has a home run in 4 straight games. Pete is hot now, and it could not have come at a better time. No question about it. Pete Alonso was one of the issues during the losing streak. He was not only slumping, he was having horrible at-bats. It has clicked for him. The walk-off home run on Sunday not only gave the Mets a much-needed victory, but look what he's done since. That's the first of the 4 straight home runs in games. Matt writes, Evan, I'm typing this out after I watched Brandon Nimmo make a legitimately Little League caliber throw from left field that had to be the single worst throw I have ever seen. What I want to ask is, are they better off with Marte in left field and Nimmo at DH? He's costing us runs. Boy, that was a terrible throw. I mean, that was the one run Jonathan gave up. I described it earlier. He gave up a base hit after the delay. He committed an error trying to pick him off. He threw a wild pitch. He put a runner on third with less than 2 outs. And Luis Ariz hit a little fly ball to left field. That's all it was. And yes, Brandon Nimmo's arm is nothing. The reason why I wouldn't go as far to say play Marte in left field is I think at this point in his career, with where Starling Marte is, I don't know if he can get through a couple of games playing left field without getting hurt. And even though his arm may be better, I'm not sure about everything else. And that would certainly be one of my worries. But yes, the arm was very weak. Let's name a Rico I'm the Man Now star of the series. I think this one is very simple. It's clearly Pete Alonso. He went 5 for 10 in this series. He hit 3 home runs. And think about all the home runs. Like, all of the home runs had some level of importance. And I'll go backwards. In the finale of this series, he hits the home run that gives them an early 1-0 lead. In game 2 of this series, before the Mets lost, he hits the home run in the first inning that gave them a 1-0 lead. In the opener of this series, right after San Diego had gotten a run back to make it 5-1, he hits a home run that makes it 7-1, sure, but it's still early enough in the game, and none of us were confident in the second inning. And the other thing about these home runs, they're all bombs. I mean, I think all of them are above 400 feet. Like the one on Tuesday was listed at 436 feet. I thought it was further. He hit that one into the second deck in left center field. So he's completely locked in. I will give you some honorable mentions. I think Francisco Lindor deserves honorable mention. He ended up going 4 for 10 in this series with a home run. I think Juan Soto deserves honorable mention. He ended up going 4 for 13 with a home run and a couple of RBIs in this series. And from a pitching perspective, I think Sean Manaea and Jonah Tong deserve honorable mentions. Obviously, what Tong did in the most important game the Mets have played to this point, rubber game, who knows what to expect. Trouble early, ends up giving up an unearned run in 5 innings. And I'd say Sean Manaea, too, cleaning up the Clay Holmes game after Clay Holmes went the first 4. It was a series victory, so there's always going to be, in a series victory, a few more people that deserve honorable mention. But I think you'd agree with me, Hoff. It's clearly Pete Alonso with the home run in each game, right?
The only person I would say is Tong, because I think that this was maybe obviously the biggest start of his career, but it was a huge start for the Mets too. I mean, they needed this win. Again, You said it to start the podcast. They need to earn our trust, and right now the Mets don't have it. The fact that they went out there and won this game, won the series, makes me feel a little bit better about this team, and Tong was the reason for it.
The net negative, I think it's an open and shut case. I know Mark Vientos struggled in this series. He's cooled off. The net negative is David Peterson. I don't think there's any question about it. It was a bad start. It was a mediocre start. Obviously, I wouldn't have even allowed him to face Manny Machado in the fifth inning, but guess what? He faced Manny Machado in the fifth inning. So as much as I disagreed with the move, he still threw the pitch. He still threw that curveball that was right there, and Manny crushed it. 5 innings, 6 runs. I think David Peterson clearly earned the net negative of this 3-game series.
Like you say, just because you load the bases doesn't mean you have to give up a home run. But here's the question I have for you, because somebody called in yesterday or today, whatever time it is right now, Thursday show with BT and Sal, and they made a point with David Peterson. Maybe he should have just walked Manny Machado. Walked him with the bases.
I mean, come on, bro. What are you talking about? That's ridiculous.
And then he went on to walk the next batter anyway, didn't he?
After the grand slam, I thought he got the next 2 guys out, but let me tell you, no, he got the next guy out, walked the batter, and then got the next guy out.
Right, okay.
Look, that's ridiculous. I mean, it's a 2-2 game in the 5th inning. And Manny Machado's a hell of a player. He's not Barry Bonds. I'm sorry, like he's really good, and I think we'd all love Manny Machado on our team, despite some of the mental mistakes he made in this 3-game series. But that's absurd. You're not walking him. You're putting someone in who has a better chance to get him out. That'd be my answer. And I think when you have a fresh bullpen in your Carlos Mendoza, you need to take advantage of it. So here's where we are on the awards so far this year with 3 series to go. Pete Alonso has won his 7th Rico I'm the Man Now Star of the Series, which does lead the team. He has 7. Lindor and Soto have 5. So there's a really good chance that Pete Alonso, with this Rico I'm the Man Now Star of the Series, has wrapped it up. Like, I don't think anyone's coming for him. As far as David Peterson is concerned, this is his 3rd net negative. He won it in the Atlanta series where they lost 2 out of 3, and he won it in the Miami series where they lost 3 out of 4. So congratulations to Pete Alonso. Jay writes, Mets doomsday scenario. You guys ready for a little doomsday scenario? It's been a mostly positive Rico, I'd say. So why not give us some doomsdays to wrap it up? Jay writes, Pete, I hope you get a laugh out of this email. I'm sorry it's so long, but it'll be worth the read. Okay, let's all find out together. Being a lifelong Met fan, I've become accustomed to the disappointment and torture that this team causes us time and time again. I've always been a negative fan and always think of the worst possible scenario when it comes to this team. Who knows? Maybe I somewhat enjoy being kicked in the balls by this team day in and day out. So with that in mind, and with a postseason spot anything but a guarantee, I'd like to present you with a possible Mets doomsday scenario in which the team will remind us just who they are. Just to set the scene, I'll assume the Mets need to win the final game of the season in Miami in order to clinch a playoff spot. In other words, they control their own destiny. So without further ado, I present to you 3 gut-wrenching, back-breaking ways this team will lose the final game of the series to miss the playoffs and put a bow on this dreadful season. Number 1, the Mets lose 1-0 and go 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position, leaving the bases loaded in the 9th, where the LD offense rears its ugly head. Number 2, the Mets take a 7-2 lead in the 4th inning, but do not record another hit the rest of the way. Eventually, the bullpen implodes, and the Marlins take an 8-7 lead after 8 innings. The Mets put together a Fugazi rally in the top of the 9th in which they get 2 base runners via walk, just for Francisco Alvarez to ground into a season-ending double play. Not picking on Alvarez, just think he's the most likely candidate. Scenario number 3. With the Mets leading 4-3 in the bottom of the 9th, Edwin Diaz walks back-to-back hitters with 2 out and nobody on, and eventually gives up a double to Augustin Ramirez, in turn ending their season right before their eyes. Let me know which of these doomsday scenarios sounds the most Mets-esque to you. Would love to hear both of your thoughts. This exercise is a bit therapeutic for me in the sense that I expect one of these scenarios to play out, and in the event that it doesn't, I'll be pleasantly surprised. Note, The Mets could avoid these scenarios by winning games and taking care of business. Fingers crossed we don't have to end up having to win the final game of the season to make the playoffs. That last part is really, really important. The Mets have a 2-game lead over teams with tiebreakers on them, that being the Cincinnati Reds and the Arizona Diamondbacks. And I say that because that 2-game lead is really a 2-game lead. If you blow the 2-game lead and it's a tie, destiny is out of your hands. There's nothing you can do. So to ensure the Mets make the playoffs without asking for any kind of help, they have to go 9-1. They can afford to lose one game. Once they lose a second game, as unlikely as it may feel that the Reds are going to run the table or the Diamondbacks are going to run the table, you at least give yourself the chance that they do, and you miss the playoffs. And just to remind you, the Reds play 3 more with Chicago, 3 with Pittsburgh in Cincinnati, and 3 with Milwaukee. Do I think they're going to go 9-0? Not necessarily, but I'm just reminding you that if the Mets lose 2 games, it could happen. The Diamondbacks schedule is very difficult, even though they are the team that scares me the most. They play 3 with the Phillies, 3 with the Dodgers, and 3 with the Padres. As far as all your scenarios are concerned, I mean, they all suck. Like, which one's the worst? I don't know, man. I mean, blowing a 7-2 lead and watching the offense do nothing after that sounds pretty big. Edwin Diaz blowing a save. Look, I trust Edwin Diaz. It doesn't mean he can't blow a save or he can't be the culprit on a series-ending or season-ending loss. But I don't think that would be typical Mets, because I don't view this season as a season that Edwin Diaz has contributed greatly to the losing, because he really hasn't. He's been one of the positives. So I think the other 2 scenarios are the ones that would probably break the most. But look, my goal right now, and I think it's a reasonable one, is get this thing done before ever going to Miami. You have 3 games against the Washington Nationals. They should sweep them, to respond to an earlier email. They should sweep them. And if you sweep them and the Reds or Diamondbacks can get picked up once or twice, and now your lead is 3 games, or dare I say 4 games, you go into that final road trip feeling pretty good for yourself. I got tiebreak information. You guys want some tiebreak information?
I love tiebreak information. Let's go.
Yeah, I know you do. We all know the individual one-on-one tiebreakers, but what if there's a 3-way? What if there's a 4-way? You guys ready? I need to sip some water before I break these things down. You ready?
This is just going to be now. There's no more. They don't play each other. There's no playoff like to get into the playoffs, right? It's just all. It's decided by stats.
It is all about tiebreakers. I do not like that personally. When they made these changes, and they made these changes right after they, settled. They settled the lockout and they created the new playoff format for the 2022 season. One of the things that came with it, and I didn't like it at the time, was eliminating the 1-game playoff. And they do that for logistical reasons. But what I don't like about it, and by the way, there's no bias here. If they played 1-game playoffs, the Mets would have been involved in one last year. Just to be fair, like, they won a playoff spot due to a tiebreaker. So if under my plan there were 1-game playoffs, last year would have been far more complicated than it turned out to be. But I believe when you play 162 games, it isn't really fair to have tiebreakers, especially ones that aren't the fairest, to determine if you make the playoffs or not. I don't like it. Like, the head-to-head is the fairest tiebreaker one could have. So if you win a season series against the team, that's fine. It's once you get to the next level of tiebreaks that it feels sort of random and not fair. So I don't like this, but these are the rules. So we kind of have to live with it. If the Mets and the Giants are tied, just the Mets and the Giants, the Mets make the playoffs. If the Mets and the Diamondbacks are tied, it will likely be the Diamondbacks in the playoffs. It's going to take a lot for that to change, because the next tiebreaker is record against your division, and the Diamondbacks have a better record against the West than the Mets do against the East. So it's weird. Like, the Diamondbacks would have to lose a bunch of games to the Dodgers and the Padres while simultaneously making up 2 games on the Mets. And oh, by the way, the Mets need to win games in their division. So just stick with me on this. The Diamondbacks will have the tiebreaker on the New York Mets. Reds have the tiebreaker on the New York Mets. Now let's do a 4-way. If all 4 teams are tied, the Cincinnati Reds would win the tiebreaker. And for those that want me to show my work, it's record against all the other tied teams. So the Mets' record against the Giants, Diamondbacks, and Reds is 9-9. The Giants' record against the Mets, Diamondbacks, and Reds is 11-14. The Diamondbacks' record against the other 3 teams is 12-13. But Cincinnati actually played really well against the other teams. They went 4-2 against the Mets, 4-2 against Arizona, and 3-3 against the Giants. So they are 11-7. So a 4-way tie would go to Cincinnati. In fact, if the Reds are tied with anybody, they will make the playoffs. So the Reds are in the best tie-break scenario. Same thing with 3-way ties. If the Mets are tied with San Francisco, Cincinnati, Cincy makes it. If the Mets are tied with Arizona, Cincinnati, Cincinnati makes it. So the Reds are the evil ones here. You don't want to be tied with the Cincinnati Reds.
So you're saying if you want a threesome or a foursome, you don't want the Reds to be part of this.
You do not want them in it. No.
Okay. Got it.
They will make it. Now, let's eliminate the Reds now because we all get it. You don't want to be with them. If the Mets, Giants, and Diamondbacks tie, all right? Mets, Giants, Diamondbacks. Mets, Giants, Diamondbacks. I don't know what happens because we'll do the math together. The Mets' record against the Giants and Diamondbacks is 7-5. The Diamondbacks' record against the Mets and Giants is 10-9. So I guess 7-5 is better than 10-9. Is that fair to say? Is that a higher winning percentage? I assume it is. So the Mets would win a 3-way with Arizona and San Francisco. So there you go. So the Mets win a 3-way with Arizona and San Francisco, lose a 3-way with Cincy and Arizona, lose a 3-way with San Francisco and Cincinnati, and lose a 4-way because the Reds are involved. So if the Mets are involved in a 3-way tie, but it doesn't include the Reds, my understanding is the New York Mets will get the last wild card spot. Are we good? Does that all make sense?
I think we're good. I think that if you're a Mets fan, you want a 3-way with the Giants and the Diamondbacks. That's the only threesome that you want is Mets, Giants, Diamondbacks. That's the threesome.
Yeah, and again, I'm checking my work to make sure I'm right on this. The Mets are 4-2 against the Giants and 3-3 against Arizona. That makes them 7-5 against the 2 other tied teams. The Giants, forget them. They're 2-4 against the Mets and 6-7 against the Diamondbacks. So forget the Giants. The Diamondbacks are 3-3 against the Mets and 7-6 against the Giants. So 10-9 versus 7-5. Which better?
7-5.
Let me do winning percentage. Hold on one second.
7-5.
7-5 is better than 10-9, right?
Yeah.
I'm just confirming.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Mets.
Yeah, that's 100%. Yeah.
Aren't you glad I showed my work? Because instead of me just definitively saying this one the tie break, that one the tie break, I'm telling you how we get there, right? We all feel good about that?
For some reason, I thought that the Diamondbacks still have the edge over the Giants in general in the playoffs.
They do. The Diamondbacks beat the Giants 7-6. So if it's Diamondbacks Giants, it'll go to Arizona.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
freaking stupid.
Did you want me to break down the other ties that don't involve the Mets? Is that really what we want?
No. This is a Met Pro podcast. They're in the playoffs. Let's go. As long as there's not a foursome, as long as there's no foursome, we're good.
Look, here's the reality. The Mets shouldn't be tied with anybody. How about they finish with a better record than all of the teams we just mentioned, and then these things will not get complicated. That's my plan, and it ain't that complicated.
Now, am I wrong? Tell me this. Since the Cohen era has taken place, take away the playoff wins, the wild card and the NLDS, have the Mets actually had a celebration when they've clinched a playoff spot?
Well, they celebrated last year.
Did they really, though?
When Edwin Diaz got the last out against Travis d'Arnaud in game 161, they didn't celebrate.
They celebrated and they went back out on the field to play another game.
That's true.
They did.
They had to quickly go back out and celebrate. Yeah.
In 2022, they waited to clinch the division. Guess what? They still haven't clinched it.
That is true. So yeah, I guess if they clinch a playoff spot, which I am really hoping will happen in Chicago, the same place they celebrated winning the National League pennant in 2015. I assume there'll be a nice raucous celebration.
Well, let's have and we should bring some sake with us. Let's freaking go.
You want to go to Chicago and celebrate?
I do. I want to pop sake.
I got a great plan. All right, this plan may blow your mind. So we bring the Mio Sparkling Sake down to Miami because the Mets end the season in Miami against the Marlins. Now, I hope they clinch before that, but they may have to clinch on Friday, or they may have to play out Saturday and Sunday. Either way, we stay on Monday. But why are we staying in Miami on Monday? What are we doing? Monday night, Jets-Dolphins. Rico Brogna live from Jets-Dolphins, recapping the Mets regular season and getting you set for hopefully the playoffs, while the Jets get set to hopefully beat the crap out of the Dolphins. That's a trip right there.
That feels like another the pain with Joe Beningo.
There could be a lot of pain involved. I got a pick for you, and our pick segment, as always, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I'm actually going to take the over on the Mets-Nationals game on Friday night. The Met offense is a weird animal. They're very, very weird, and sometimes they're streaky. And with Pete Alonso being red hot, with Lindor starting to heat up, with Soto obviously being hot, I think they're going to score a lot of runs on Friday. But I also think there's a possibility that Brandon Sprout gives up a few runs. So I'm going to take the over of 8.5, which is the number that is set for Friday night's game between the New York Mets and the Washington Nationals. The pitching matchup right now is scheduled to be Brandon Sprout against Alvarez, the left-hander, who's actually pitched pretty well for Washington so far. So I'll take the over on 8.5. Once again, that was the pick segment. It was brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. All right. They got to sweep the Nationals. I think we all agree with that. Let's see them take care of business. Let's see the Mets prove to us that we should trust them. We'll have a Rico Brogna at some point Friday night, kind of recapping the first game. We'll have another Rico Brogna to recap the series at some point Sunday. Subscribe. You'll never miss an episode. Make sure you're also subscribed to the WFAN YouTube page. If you consume it live, you won't miss an episode that way either. Thank you very much for hanging out with us on another edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.